Good evening, Professor. My name is Catherine Walker. Today I'm going to present a final simulation on night swift transportation. Bottom line up front, throughout this presentation, a brief introduction and review of what night swift transportation will be provided, followed by a discussion on the domestic and global environments in which the company operates. Next, we will review the technological, political, legal, and social cultural factors that influence night swift transportation. I'll introduce an economic theory from Rostow, and I will close with a review and recommendations for improvement. So, what is night swift transportation? Night swift transportation is one of the largest full truckload carriers that offers logistical services within the industry. And over to the left of this slide, you'll see the logo for both night transportation and swift transportation, which actually merged into one company as we know it today, Night Swift Transportation. The company is headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, domestically, and was founded in 1990 by family members, two sets of brothers within the Knight family. So we have Kevin and Keith brothers and Randy and Gray brothers who joined forces and combined their knowledge and expertise within the trucking industry to create the Night Swift Transportation Company as we know it today. And the company employs over 24,000 people at the time that I was conducting the research for this project. Domestically, there are two primary federal agencies that regulate and oversee the trucking industry. That will be the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration and the United States Department of Transportation. I have some notes here that I would like to reference to give some additional insight as far as what the FMSCA administration actually does, which is oversee the qualifications for the drivers. They also aid with the licensing, hiring policies, and they enforce the safety regulations that are published in the Federal Register and compiled within the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations. The Department of Transportation actually issues identification numbers to trucks that are going to be on the road. They have to have a special, unique identifier that's issued by the United States Department of Transportation. And so that's one way that this agency regulates individuals who are working within the transportation industry. On a state level, because Night Swift Transportation is headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, this would mean that the Arizona Department of Transportation comes into play, and more specifically, we have the Arizona Administrative Code R17-06 that applies to trucks of the capacity, weight, and size of the trucks that Night Swift Transportation operates, as well as the Department of Public Safety. Globally, Night Swift transportation is now in two countries outside of the United States, which would be Canada and Mexico. The environment in Canada consists of 10 provinces and 3 territories, which borders the United States, Alaska, Greenland, and a couple of islands that actually are connected to France. The primary languages that are spoken in Canada is English and French, although there are many other dialects that are spoken. These are the two most common and also the official languages of the country. When we go over to Mexico, we'll notice that there is a total of 32 states that makes up the Mexican government. It borders the United States, Guatemala, and Belize. The language there that we most commonly think of that is spoken is Spanish, but it is very important, I feel, for me to point out that there are a lot of Native American tongues, such as Mayan, Aztec, that's still spoken within the borders of Mexico. There's many ancient indigenous tongues that are still spoken within the borders of the country. Fortunately for Night Swift transportation, there has recently been an overhaul on the policy as it relates to trading with our neighboring countries, Canada and Mexico. And it's called the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. And we entered into this on July 1st of 2020, replacing effectively NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement. This revision to the policy provided additional trade-related benefits for United States companies, and it consists of a total of 34 chapters. There are also several annexes and 16 side letters. I put a reference link towards the end of this presentation of where this document can be located if one is so inclined to explore this information further. When we head over to Canada, we'll notice that there is a Minister of Transportation that oversees the laws that's related to highway transportation and safety requirements of vehicles. There's also a nonprofit organization called the Canadian Council of Motor Transport Administrators, which helps to develop policies and to write the National Code of Standards. In addition to that, every province within Canada has the ability to issue their own safety regulations, so it's important to keep abreast of what's transpiring province province to province when you're working with Canada. When we head over to Mexico, we'll notice that there is an Office Journal Federation which actually keeps a log of all of the policies and records pertaining to transportation and other items within the country. However, it's written in Spanish, so it would be important and advantageous for Night Swift transportation to have someone who is bilingual and skilled in law to aid them in navigating the policies and regulations within the country of Mexico. There is also a Secretary of Transportation that oversees the trucking industry, and in Mexico there is a value-added tax law, VAT, which I believe is in many countries, not just Mexico. And pretty much it charges for all activities that are carried out within Mexican borders. And if you're trying to ship something in, those taxes is due up front before it before your shipment goes any further. Was that duty free? Next slide. Okay, I'm back, and I hope it picked up where I left off at. I noticed a typo on my slide, and I just corrected it. We're moving forward, speaking about the social, cultural factors as it pertains to night swift transportation. And I'm using the 6 dimensions theory that I was introduced to during this course, developed by Mr. Hofstede, and I sure hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He was a social psychologist from the Netherlands, and the model that he developed lists out the 6 areas of concern that a society needs to address in order for it to organize itself. I have some notes here, and I'm going to read them so that the data that's on the next slide will make sense and will have relevance. So the first category that was identified is power distance, and it describes the way that people in a society relate to each other on a hierarchical scale. People or countries that rank low on the power distance scale value equal treatment versus countries that rank higher on this power distance scale. They may use inequality as a way to actually maintain order. The second category is uncertainty avoidance, and this is the degree to which a culture is able to embrace the uncertainty of the future. Cultures that score high on this particular category have a high level of uncertainty avoidance and may rely heavily on policies, technology, law, religion, pretty much anything that gives them a sense of stability and comfort. Whereas countries that score lower on this scale are more relaxed and flexible. The third category is individuality and collectivism. And it shows how individuals in a society relate to each other in regards to the decision-making process and also with the development of their values. So, in countries such as the United States, we are more inclined to respect the rights and the decisions of others on an individual level, whereas other countries and cultures may be more group-oriented and group-minded. Okay. Then we have the masculinity and femininity of a culture. And in this particular model, because I feel like masculinity and femininity is much broader than just assertiveness and nurturing, but these are the 2 words that Mr. Hofstede identified. And so, depending on how assertive a country is, because the feminine energy is also assertive as well, we just go about it in a different way. But that's just a personal disclaimer based off of experience in life. So assertiveness in this particular model has been attributed to the masculine, whereas nurturing, because men are able to nurture as well, they just go about it in a different way, but that's neither here nor there. Nurturance has been assigned to femininity. And so countries that are high in masculinity would be the United States is one example. The website provided Norway as a example of a country that leans more towards femininity. I don't know much about Norway. I'm not really sure how they came to that conclusion. but I find it interesting nonetheless and important to note. The next category is long versus short-term orientation, meaning having foresight, being willing to have that endurance to do the great work for future generations, for the future to come, versus needing and seeking instant gratification, quick results, instant, outcomes. So, countries such as China is an example that is given as a country that is more geared towards future rewards versus us here in the United States, which loves to have quick results. And the next category that we will cover, and the last category that we will cover, is indulgence versus constraint. So there is, and this is actually a new addition. This was not a part of the initial model that was developed by Mr. Hofstede when he created this cultural dimensions theory. However, in 2010, this item was added, and it focuses on the difference between countries that value the satisfaction of human needs and desires versus having that restraint to align with societal norms. On this slide, I am comparing and contrasting the rankings of the 3 countries that Knight-Swift Transportation Company operates in, based on the dimensional theory that we just reviewed on the previous slide, the 6 different categories. And as we can see, Canada and the United States scored very similarly in all of the categories. Mexico seemed to be an outlier, which was a little bit shocking to me, because I'm thinking because they're so close in proximity that they may share similar views, but that wasn't the case based off of the data that I retrieved from Mr. Hofstede's website. Nevertheless, all 3 countries figured out a way to come together and form an alliance for the purposes of lucrative business opportunities and gains. So kudos to them for bypassing all of this and finding common ground to work together. Anyway, next slide. The economic environment for Knight-Swift Transportation is wonderful. Opportunities abound, as it seems everybody in this society, in this day and age, requires reliable shipping and logistical services. As a matter of fact, in Canada, trucking is the preferred method and mode of transport for shipping goods to consumers. And I also listed here that in terms of stages of economic growth, and I'm citing another theory provided by Mr. Rostow, Knight-Swift Transportation would be on stage 4 out of 5 due to their technological advances, which we will discuss in further detail shortly. Right now, technological environment for Knight-Swift Transportation, based off of the research that I was able to find and the sources that I was able to find, Knight-Swift Transportation is a soft technology company And by soft technology company, I mean they're not producing or manufacturing their own technological equipment and selling it to um, other entities to earn a profit as like one of their primary business services. They're actually a consumer that purchases technological equipment from outside entities, agencies, companies, which which, from my understanding, places them in the soft technology category. There are two companies that I found very interesting that Night Swift Transportation is working with currently, and that's Embark, and I have their emblem here listed on the slide, and that's because they're providing Night Swift with autonomous truck technology, which blows my mind because they're assisting them with having the trucks to drive themselves. And if this proves to be successful, I can only imagine how many more customers Night Swift will be able to attract and how many more orders they will be able to fill. Because these autonomous trucks could run pretty much 24/7. We won't have to worry no more about driver burnout um, with this technology being implemented. There's also Zonar Solutions software that is installed in over 17,000 of Night Swift transportation vehicles across the country. And what this technology assists with is GPS tracking, helping to track where the driver is located at any given time, also aiding with the communication between the driver and dispatch, helping drivers to map out their route of how they want to commute throughout their shipping to deliver their shipping requirements, and much more. And it's kind of like in a tablet style installed in the truck, and it's also applications that truck drivers are able to use on their phone, on their actual cell phones too. So it's like they have 24/7 access to dispatch and whatever information that they need to know about their route, about the items that they're ordering, any special instructions that comes through is also routed through the Zonar Solutions software. Okay. One of the main purposes of this assignment was to pick a company that was considered to be at the bottom of the barrel, to determine why, and to provide a recommendation. So now we're really getting to the meat of this presentation. We're like 23 minutes in. But these right here is like the most important slides and the most important takeaways, in my opinion. One area that really stood out when I was doing my research on this company as an area that needed some attention is employee relations. More specifically, the way we are coding the employees that works for Night Swift Transportations. There has been several lawsuits that have been filed by employees who felt as though they were coded inaccurately as independent contractors despite performing the duties and responsibilities of an employee. This, of course, causes inconvenience, to put it lightly. When one goes about trying to file taxes, because you don't get the same tax benefits and breaks as an independent contractor versus an employee. It also raises concerns about benefits, job security, job responsibilities and duties, because as an independent contractor, we're going to get into it deeper in the next slide. what constitutes an independent contractor. Another reason why this is a hot topic is because the American Trucking Association identified that there is currently a driver shortage and has projected that by 2023 there will need to be an additional 1 million truck drivers added in order to meet and maintain the quality of service based on the demand. Okay? And so, with there being such a, and the reason why there's a shortage, let's just make sure we make this clear, is because there is a lot of turnover, a lot of driver burnout. Then we have drivers who are retiring, and not enough new drivers who are wanting to sign up to take, to take up the baton and carry it further. And then we have the issue of marijuana, which is legal in some states but not in all, which causes difficulty in some drivers with passing drug tests, because it may be legal where they are, but depending on where they're going, it may not be. So that's another thing that is causing and contributing to the driver shortage at this time. So, of course, I came up with some well thought out recommendations to provide to night shift transportation. They are as follows. My first recommendation is to please refer or even get in contact if need be with the Department of Labor, specifically the Fair Labor Standards Act and the Wage Department Division. Let's see, let me make sure I'm getting this division correct here. This is the actual law right here. Fair Labor Standards Act. That's the law. It's within the Department of Labor, and I want to say it's the Wages Department. Because this right here, this act, it lists out the requirements. It's like 7 that is commonly referenced when determining what actually makes up the criteria of what makes someone an independent contractor, and I'm going to read them out right now. I have it here on my notes. So the first one, the extent to which the services rendered are an integral part of the principal's business. And so if you're a truck driver working for a trucking company that specializes in logistics, it seems as though this would be an integral part of the principal's business, just from the outside looking in. Number 2 is the permanency of the relationship. The third criteria is the amount of the alleged contractor's investment in facilities and equipment. The fourth criteria is the nature and degree of control by the principal. So the driver can't just go rogue and go where they want to go. And just go off the map. I told you they got GPS tracking on the trucks, and the truckers also have logs. That's another thing that the company that I mentioned earlier helps them to manage, is the trucker driving logs, where they at, when they taking breaks, how long their breaks are, like that. So they're not really getting that much control over how they exercising their duties as a truck driver from the outside looking in. We have here the alleged contractor's opportunities for profits and loss, the amount of initiative, judgment, or foresight in open market competition with others required for the success of the claimed independent contractor. And I'm not really seeing how that applies to this scenario. And the last criteria is the degree of the independent business organization and operation. Just reading this As somebody from the outside looking in, it appears as though your truck drivers would not classify as independent contractors. However, once again, we have a whole agency that's dedicated to this, as well as a whole regulation that covers this. And I recommend that we get familiar with it and get familiar with the Department of Labor so that we are making sure that we are meeting the standard. My next recommendation is to provide additional training to your human resource staff so that they too are aware of what constitutes an independent contractor and what constitutes an employee, and so that they don't get it misconstrued or mistaken, which will help to alleviate and hopefully eliminate lawsuits that are filed for items of this nature. The next recommendation that I would recommend is to educate your employees on what their status is. If for some reason there is a situation or a circumstance where these employees would actually be eligible to be classified as a independent contractor, make sure that it is known and verbally expressed, and also put in writing on paper and signed and agreed upon. It's like a wonderful way to close all of those loopholes and to pretty much CYA, cover your own, fill in the blank. The last recommendation that I would like to offer up is to implement quarterly roundtable discussions where management and employees are able to engage and express items that may be of concern, what's going well, what can be improved. It will help, in my opinion, to boost morale. It will help to keep everyone feeling a sense of cohesion and teamwork. Truck driving can be like a solitary profession. So it would be wonderful to be able to touch bases every now and then, see your fellow truck drivers, see management, and to have a conversation. And with your company being named Knight Swift Transportation, and with the founders' last names literally being Knight, I think it would be a wonderful implementation, symbolic of forming a brotherhood of equality, where everybody's voice matters and everybody's voice is heard. Now, of course, I could come up with more recommendations all day, every day. If I'm added to your team. Or employment. I have plenty of ideas and recommendations that can help to improve the company and take it to higher heights. And with that, I would like to close. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Listed here is a copy of the many, many references that I have used in order to prepare this presentation. Wow, I've been speaking for 33 minutes now. I hope that by this point, I have expressed a thorough understanding of the material and content covered. Thank you for this opportunity to learn more and to research a company that I probably would not have picked under other circumstances. I really got to expand and learn something that is completely out of my field of work. And with that, have a wonderful evening.